The terrifying reality is that behind the glamorous magazine covers, a silent predator of profound insecurity has forced these legendary figures into a volatile environment of self-destruction. They were driven to gamble their lives and their physical forms on cold operating tables, surrendering to the prick of unforgiving needles and the harsh, toxic corrosion of unsafe chemicals just to buy a fleeting, artificial sense of validation. This internal crisis has triggered an earth-shattering sudden drop for some of the most celebrated names in entertainment history, transforming icons into tragic tabloid fodder and leaving an unfillable void where pure innocence once lived. Right now, we are pulling back the curtain to trace the raw agony and the hidden scars of 15 Black stars who were utterly crushed by fame's crushing pressure. Brace yourselves as we examine the exact moments the illusion shattered. Countess Vaughn. Mode F, the inanimate observer. Look closely through the cold, clear surface of an empty jar of industrial strength with glue sitting on a cluttered dressing room table. For weeks on end, this inanimate object clung tightly to the scalp of sitcom star Countess Vaughn, holding the golden illusion of her flawless, unblemished public image perfectly in place beneath dazzling stage lights. To millions of 90s viewers, she was the bubbly, laughter-inducing Kim Parker, a powerhouse voice and a precious gem of television comedy. But the glass jar witnessed the slow, agonizing breakdown of that perfect facade in the quiet hours after the show ended. Behind the laughter lay a bleeding heart plagued by body image insecurities and a deep self-doubt nurtured by Hollywood's harsh beauty standards. Every morning, as she tried to peel back the lace-front wig, the unblinking eye of the mirror watched her hands tremble in total isolation. The industrial scar, the systemic blade of the industry's aesthetic expectations, triggered a devastating sudden drop when the toxic, chemical glue was finally pulled away. It didn't reveal healthy skin, but a horrific, ulcerated scalp, oozing pus and marred by permanent patches of hair loss. A heart-wrenching sight of raw agony. Driven by fame's crushing pressure, Countess even gambled her life on the operating table for liposuction, desperately hoping a slender figure would buy her more love from the network executives. Ultimately, these blind pursuits of validation betrayed her, leaving her face disfigured by severe chemical discoloration and turning her private trauma into global tabloid fodder. When she exposed her literal and figurative scars on the doctors, she was left standing in an unfillable void of media alienation, her soul deeply traumatized by a system that demanded she mutilate her heritage to fit into a narrow, suffocating mold. The bright, cheerful studio laughter track of a classic 90s sitcom is compressed and violently sliced open, instantly replaced by the sharp, metallic snap of a pair of medical scissors snipping through a thick lace mesh in absolute silence. Raven-Symoné. Mode B, the reverse tragedy. Look directly at the terrifying image of a teenage girl suffering from violent, uncontrollable seizures on a cold operating table, her fragile body hovering on the razor-thin line between life and death. This near-fatal medical emergency stood in brutal, heartbreaking contrast to the golden illusion of her childhood, when millions of 90s viewers adored her as the epitome of intelligence and optimism. A bright, bubbly black sweetheart radiating pure joy on The Cosby Show and Dr. Dolittle. But behind that forgiving spotlight lay a silent predator of corporate cruelty. Before she had even turned 18 years old, the very people running the entertainment industry locked her behind invisible walls of body shaming, viewing her not as a deeply talented child, but as a commercial product that needed to be aggressively sculpted to satisfy the crowd's visual appetite. The teenage scalpel. The systemic blade of Hollywood's aesthetic prejudices pushed the young star into a grim, desperate survival strategy, undergoing multiple breast reductions and intensive liposuction procedures simultaneously before her body had even fully developed. As the anesthesia failed and her small frame buckled under the devastation of the scalpel, her curated world suffered an earth-shattering sudden drop. She nearly paid with her life just to escape the raw agony of being relentlessly labeled the fat kid in global tabloid fodder. For decades, she suppressed her profound revulsion toward these toxic standards, forcing herself to smile for the cameras while harboring a heavy psychological ghost of exhausted mental health and lingering physical trauma. Raven survived the ordeal, but the pure, unblemished part of her innocence was forever sacrificed on that table, leaving an unfillable void where a protected childhood should have thrived. Drew Sidora. Mode A. The forensic. Study the heavy, post-pregnancy twilight reflecting off a large, gilded mirror in an empty Atlanta dressing room, illuminating a woman trembling as she confronts her own silhouette. That mirror belonged to Drew Sidora, who once stood wrapped in the golden illusion of Hollywood's next big hope in Divas 1995 and the fiercely proud, fiery dancer in Step Up. But with the stage lights dimmed, the curves that were once glorified became a haunting obsession after she embraced motherhood. The quiet room was violently ripped apart by toxic whispers from social media and the harsh prejudices of the entertainment world, declaring her washed up and claiming her changing figure no longer belonged in showbiz. This invisible enemy did not just attack her flesh. It triggered the absolute collapse of her self-esteem, locking her behind invisible walls of deep-seated isolation. The broadcasted surgery. The systemic blade of this superficial world drove Drew into a state of utter desperation, choosing a high-risk path to resurrect her career. A comprehensive mommy makeover package. She lay on a cold operating table, allowing scalpels to slice her open, suction out excess fat, and stitch together muscles torn during childbirth in a dangerous gamble for industry validation. The resulting sudden drop brought no instant confidence, only suffocating bouts of pain, long bleeding incisions, and the intense raw agony of reconstructing her body to satisfy a cruel market. The ultimate tragedy reached its peak when she was forced to broadcast this excruciating healing process on The Real Housewives of Atlanta. Before millions of lenses, her reality became permanent tabloid fodder as she exposed her scarred body and the profound trauma of a Black woman who perpetually felt she was never enough. The surgery left an unfillable void where self-love should have lived, proving she was still running from the ghosts of her childhood star days. Kelly Rowland. Mode C. The immersive witness. You stand caught in the bustling backstage corridors of a hit Hollywood television set, watching 17-year-old Kelly Rowland slip silently into the makeup room away from the blinding flashbulbs. Out in the arena, the name Destiny's Child is beginning to completely dominate the global music charts. But as you watch her stare into the mirror, you can see a heartbreaking burden of absolute inadequacy washing over her young face. She is wrapped in the golden illusion of a rising pop icon, standing proudly beneath dazzling stage lights. Yet, the industry's ruthless architecture demands that female artists flaunt voluptuous curves to captivate the camera, leaving Kelly feeling like a mismatched puzzle piece at the absolute pinnacle of her career. The obsession over having a small chest has transformed into an invisible enemy, a psychological ghost that haunts her relentlessly in the dark. The decade of comparison. The systemic blade of appearance-based prejudice triggered a slow, agonizing sudden drop that lasted for 10 long years. Every single night on stage, while facing millions of adoring eyes, she plummets into a volatile environment of toxic comparison, tormenting herself over whether the public genuinely loves her or merely pities her. She endures the raw agony of stuffing her bras with thick padding, while malicious whispers dismantle her self-esteem, eclipsing even the joy of winning a Grammy. At age 28, she finally surrenders to the knife for a breast augmentation. This wasn't vanity. It was a desperate survival strategy to stitch back together a self-worth shredded since adolescence. Though she survived the ordeal, the public exposure left an unfillable void, proving that even a blinding halo cannot conceal the deep scars inflicted by a prejudice that forces an artist to alter her body just to buy an artificial sense of peace. Lark Vorius. Mode J. The social media illusion. Look past the brilliantly saturated, neon-colored soundstages of 1990s California, where Lark Voorhees stood wrapped in the golden illusion of an irreplaceable television icon. As Lisa Turtle on Saved by the Bell, she embodied everything most radiant about a young Black teenager. Confidence, a trendy fashion sense, and an undeniable natural beauty that millions of young girls looked up to as a gold standard. But as a storytelling director, I must compel you to rip off this pristine corporate mask, because behind the unblinking camera lens lay an invisible enemy of crushing pressures that felt like a lifelong sentence. The public thought they knew their idol, but the reality was a dark parallel universe of deep-seated isolation that completely disconnected her from her original self. The stolen identity. The The systemic blade of Hollywood's unforgiving aesthetic standards shattered her world entirely when she stepped out into the glare of a forgiving spotlight with a completely deformed face. Desperate attempts to cling to her fading fame drove her to look at a mirror in a darkened room, confronting unnaturally pale skin bleached by harsh chemicals, swollen lips, and glassy, vacant eyes from botched Botox injections. This shocking sudden drop triggered an immediate wave of public disgrace. The media offered zero empathy, transforming her into permanent tabloid fodder and a cruel punchline for plastic surgery addiction gone mad. Every excessive use of the scalpel delivered a deep slash to her self-esteem, plunging her into an abyss of panic and psychological disorders. Her illustrious career was smashed into 1,000 pieces, leaving an unfillable void where an angel should have thrived, proving how ruthlessly the industry abandons a Black artist the moment her face ceases to be profitable. Maya Campbell. Mode E, the paradox of peaks. Step back into the golden, bustling taping days of the hit series In the House, where Maya Campbell emerged as the absolute definition of a Black it girl. With her sparkling eyes and flawlessly elegant features, she was hailed as a screen treasure holding the glowing future of Hollywood in the palm of her hand. She stood wrapped in the golden illusion of unprecedented stardom, leaving the entire crew awestruck by her breathtaking beauty every single time the studio lights flipped on. Yet, this monumental peak of cultural supremacy stood in brutal contrast to a dark parallel universe developing behind the scenes. Behind that blinding halo was a fragile soul bleeding from invisible, crushing pressures and cruel psychological traumas. The very machinery that elevated her to the zenith of fame built a volatile environment of internal destruction, transforming her into an easy target for a silent predator. The descent to the streets. The systemic blade of public alienation and unchecked mental trauma triggered a devastating, earth-shattering sudden drop. In a desperate bid to maintain her universally loved beauty before disappearing from the public eye, she fell victim to misguided cosmetic interventions and dark paths of addiction. The million-dollar smile vanished, replaced by hollow, sunken eye sockets, a mouth missing most of her teeth, and skin weathered by the elements. When secretly recorded videos of her roaming the streets leaked onto social media, her private reality became permanent tabloid fodder, leaving the world stunned by her cruel collapse. From a fiercely proud rose, she morphed into a wandering ghost, a living ruin of her former self. The industry and a cold public offered zero empathy, trampling her into the dirt when she fell and leaving an unfillable void where a legendary icon should have thrived. Meagan Good. Mode I, the ripple of one choice. Trace the near collapse of a flawless Hollywood legacy back to a single, devastating decision made in the quiet shadows of a private dressing room. A choice to trust an unlicensed aesthetic expert. In the late 1990s, the world held its breath at the mesmerizing, natural beauty of a young Meagan Good in the cinematic classic Eve's Bayou. With her skin glowing like honey, she was wrapped in the golden illusion of Black pride, celebrated as a flawless monument of natural grace. But the hidden decision to use a jar of anti-aging cream laden with toxic bleaching agents invited a silent predator into her life. In an instant, that misplaced trust functioned as a merciless foe, ruthlessly ravaging the face that had been her greatest source of professional pride. The whitewashing backlash. The resulting sudden drop did not remain hidden behind closed doors. It exploded into a furious hurricane of global public outrage the moment the media lenses caught her altered appearance. The public refused to look past the surface, weaponizing a systemic blade of harsh criticism and massive boycott campaigns that pushed her illustrious career straight to the edge of an abyss. They accused her of deliberately rejecting her roots and attempting to whitewash herself to assimilate into a white-dominated industry. Stranded in total isolation, Meagan opened up to the public, her tears rolling down the very skin that was being physically corroded by chemicals. She endured the raw agony of a soul completely betrayed by its own trust, nearly losing her livelihood and her deeply cherished cultural identity to permanent tabloid fodder. Though she fought to survive the ordeal, the intense public trauma left an unfillable void where absolute peace once lived. Brandy Norwood. Brandy. Mode D, the systemic critique. Witness how the relentless, hypermasculine and corporate architecture of Hollywood operates as a systemic blade, weaponizing immense fame to sever a young artist's connection to her authentic self. During the dazzling ballroom nights of 1997, millions of children around the globe held their breath as they watched Brandy Norwood transform into the first Black Cinderella in cinematic history. With her gentle smile and pure, round-faced beauty, she stood wrapped in the golden illusion of hope, a symbol of a generation that truly believed all dreams could come true. But the corporate machine builds invisible walls of isolation around a child star from the absolute beginning. The dazzling halo from Moesha and Cinderella inadvertently became a glittering glass cage, imprisoning Brandy in the impossible, cruel expectation of a flawless, unchanging appearance to maintain her status as a real-life princess. The glass palace fracture. This silent predator triggered an earth-shattering sudden drop when the industry elites deemed her ethnic features unrefined for high-end cinematic frames, subjecting her to a constant barrage of articles mocking her appearance. The psychological torture plunged her into a fierce internal battle, creating a profound inferiority complex that slowly eroded her faith in her natural beauty. In a desperate survival strategy to escape her own celebrity shadow, Brandy made the decision to undergo secret plastic surgeries to alter her nose and erase her original features. However, every time a scalpel touched her body, her soul splintered a little more into raw agony. When she stepped out with an unusually slender nose, the public exposure turned her reality into permanent tabloid fodder, filled with an onslaught of criticism accusing her of being fake. Forced to live a lie, she was left weeping in the dark, trapped in an unfillable void between protecting her wholesome image and the immense pain of rejecting her true heritage. Tyra Banks, Mode G, the psychological ghost. Descend into the fractured, shadow-drenched corridors of a legendary supermodel's mind, where a silent predator of paranoia and intense emotional instability began quietly dismantling her self-esteem from within. At the age of 19, having just taken the world by storm with her role on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Tyra Banks still didn't feel like a star. To the mainstream public, she stood wrapped in the golden illusion of absolute invincibility, earning millions while her face dominated magazine covers. But the crushing pressure of fame built an invisible enemy of emotional neglect and relentless insecurity within her soul. The fashion industry moguls looked past her immense talent, weaponizing razor-sharp critiques against her nose, which transformed her pristine household into a volatile environment of isolation and hidden resentment. That horrifying, paralyzing insecurity felt like a ghost pressing down on her chest, leaving the young woman suffocating amidst the glaring lights. The stitched memoir, the systemic blade of appearance-based prejudice, forced Tyra into a grim decision during the most vibrant years of her youth. Imagine the excruciating pain as she lay on the cold operating table, allowing scalpels to break down and reshape her facial structure. This wasn't vanity. It was a massacre of her self-esteem, forcing her to endure the raw agony of hiding the bruising and throbbing pain beneath thick layers of makeup. She spent nearly 3 decades carrying that heavy psychological burden, living in constant terror that a sudden, earth-shattering sudden drop would turn her secret into permanent tabloid fodder. When she finally exposed the truth in her 2018 memoir, Perfect is Boring, the public realized she had traded her true identity to avoid being spat out by the ruthless machinery of fame, leaving an unfillable void where a proud angel should have thrived. Orlando Brown, Mode B, the reverse tragedy. Look at the damp, dark corners of Los Angeles, where a man with a horrifyingly distorted face and vacant eyes wanders aimlessly, entirely drained of life. This living ruin stood in brutal, heartbreaking contrast to the sun-drenched afternoons of 1995, when an 8-year-old acting prodigy with mischievous eyes and a radiant smile melted the hearts of millions on the set of Major Payne. Back then, Orlando Brown was Disney's little prince, wrapped in the golden illusion of a future paved with velvet and prestigious awards. But the corporate machine builds invisible walls of isolation around a child star, trading pure innocence for the ruthless, overwhelming expectations of a global public from the absolute beginning. The living ruin. The systemic blade of premature fame completely shattered his domestic peace, driving him straight into a volatile environment of severe drug addiction. Narcotics function as a silent predator, gnawing away at his every cell and triggering a devastating sudden drop that hollowed out both his body and soul. While the public circulated rumors of botched plastic surgery, the truth was exponentially more grim. His face became bloated, ashen, and permanently deformed by the raw agony of self-destruction. Stranded in an abyss of depravity, he covered his neck and chest in chaotic, aggressive tattoos that looked like heavy black chains, a desperate survival strategy to hide his internal scars. His profound breakdown turned his identity into permanent tabloid fodder, leaving an unfillable void where an angel once lived. Jaleel White, Mode H, The Statistical Descent, tracked the cruel progression of a childhood legacy by measuring the physical constraints of a single character costume. A pair of thick prescription glasses, high-water suspenders, and an artificially high-pitched voice maintained for 204 episodes of a hit television show. This rigid image belonged to Jaleel White, who at the tender age of 12 accidentally created a monster of fame named Steve Urkel. To the global public, he stood wrapped in the golden illusion of an overnight millionaire, generating massive ratings while standing beneath dazzling stage lights. But behind that corporate mask, the old image became a physical scar hindering his entire future. Every single week, as he grew into a grown man, Hollywood's cold rejection of his true appearance plunged him into a brutal psychological war, locking his real identity behind invisible walls of typecasting. The eradication of Urkel, the systemic blade of industry prejudice, triggered a devastating sudden drop as he transitioned into adulthood, facing an environment where his authentic face was deemed too nerdy for mainstream leading roles. Desperate to smash the nerd mask and beg the industry to take him seriously, rumors circulated that Jaleel turned to secret plastic surgeries as a final life preserver. He allowed needles and scalpels to alter his nose and aggressively sculpt his jawline, hoping a more masculine appearance would execute the clumsy clown of his past. This wasn't simple vanity. It was a desperate attempt to assassinate his own childhood glory. When he appeared with this unfamiliar face, his reality dissolved into permanent tabloid fodder filled with public skepticism and harsh judgment. He endured the raw agony of sacrificing his natural features just to survive, leaving an unfillable void where his authentic self once lived. Marquez Houston, Mode G, The Psychological Ghost. Descend into the quiet, anxiety-ridden corridors of a former child star's mind, where growing older was treated not as a natural law, but as a career death sentence. In the vibrant television landscape of the 1990s, 13-year-old Marquez Houston stood wrapped in the golden illusion of innocence, etching the image of Roger Evans into the hearts of audiences on the sitcom Sister. He was celebrated as a symbol of the radiant, ambitious youth of the Black entertainment community. But behind the audience's booming laughter, a silent predator of intense fear took deep root in the teenager's mind. The overwhelming terror of being ruthlessly discarded by time and forgotten the exact moment his boyish charm faded. The constant pressure to maintain an ageless face built an invisible enemy within his sanctuary, transforming his mirror into a source of constant torment. The construction site. The systemic blade of Hollywood's ageist prejudices triggered a devastating sudden drop during a dead silent night in Los Angeles years later, as he stood before the bathroom light analyzing every tiny new wrinkle. Desperate to hold onto the soul of his past and protect his career from a volatile environment of obsolescence, rumors circulated that Marquez went under the knife to narrow his nose and heavily abused fillers to artificially tighten his skin. This wasn't simple vanity. It was a frantic attempt to plaster a flawless mask over his internal pain, turning his own body into a permanently unfinished construction project where needles and scalpels constantly tried to stitch back his fractured confidence. He was forced to endure the raw agony of public mockery and sarcastic comments about looking plastic as his reality became permanent tabloid fodder. He realized too late that the world only wanted to love his youngest version, leaving him trapped in an unfillable void of profound emptiness. Vivica A. Fox. Mode F. The Inanimate Observer. Look at a high-end cosmetic syringe lying abandoned on a marble vanity in a private Hollywood mansion, its transparent plastic chamber completely drained of its chemical contents. This silent object once promised to preserve the golden illusion of ageless perfection for Hollywood powerhouse Vivica A. Fox. In the mid-1990s, she arrived at blockbuster premieres like a black goddess, radiating a sharp, commanding beauty after her breakout role in Independence Day. Her confident strides on the red carpet made her the absolute pride of flawless natural beauty. But the syringe witnessed a dark parallel universe unfolding behind closed doors, driven by a terrifying, invisible enemy. An intense fear of aging and a desperate obsession that if even one wrinkle appeared, her crown would be snatched away by younger faces. The stiffening betrayal. The systemic blade of Hollywood's ageist architecture triggered an earth-shattering sudden drop when she began abusing fillers and Botox like an addictive drug to outrun time. Instead of maintaining her peak allure, the chemicals betrayed her, leaving her face stiff, swollen, and deformed beyond recognition. When she sat before Oprah Winfrey's cameras, she was forced to endure the raw agony of choking back tears of belated regret. Her curated reality dissolved into permanent tabloid fodder, filled with the ruthless mockery of a public that quickly relegated her to cheap B-movies. She paid an exorbitant price by turning herself into a test subject for extreme cosmetic thirsts, suffering the total collapse of a once supremely confident soul. Vivica strangles her own beauty and fame simply because she cannot accept the cruel laws of time, leaving an unfillable void where a queen's throne once stood. Lil' Kim. Mode B, the reverse tragedy. Look at a global rap pioneer standing under harsh media scrutiny, her face entirely distorted, her skin bleached an unnatural, alien pale. This shocking image stood in brutal, heartbreaking contrast to the late 1980s, when a young Kimberly Jones stood wrapped in the raw, unfiltered genius of the Brooklyn underground hip-hop scene. She rose to the pinnacle of cultural supremacy, universally admired as a fierce, proud icon who rewrote the rules of the entire music industry. But beneath the golden illusion of her chart-topping success and glamorous movie cameos lay a dark parallel universe of immense psychological trauma. The industry's rigid prejudices functioned as a silent predator, exploiting deep emotional wounds inflicted long before she ever stepped beneath dazzling stage lights. The erasure of Kimberly. The systemic blade of racial and aesthetic prejudice triggered an earth-shattering sudden drop behind closed doors. For years, she had endured horrific emotional abuse from men who constantly poisoned her mind with claims that she wasn't beautiful enough or light enough to be loved. To soothe the raw agony of being degraded, Lil' Kim executed a desperate, tragic survival strategy. She allowed scalpels to crush her jawbone, whittle away her nose, and drench her skin in intensely harsh bleaching chemicals. She wasn't seeking vanity. She was trying to assassinate the Black woman in the mirror to escape her past. The media offered zero empathy, tearing into her altered appearance like vultures and burying her legendary career under permanent tabloid fodder. She lost her ethnic identity to buy a peace that never came, leaving an unfillable void where a brilliant rose was battered and torn entirely to pieces. 15 transcendent powerhouses, 15 monumental peaks of cultural supremacy, and 15 devastating sudden drops into isolation or public disgrace have exposed an unyielding reality. The glorious, forgiving spotlight of fame was never a protective shield against the relentless, systemic blade of structural neglect, racial prejudices, and social stigma. These icons gave their lives, their art, and their unfiltered truths to a world that was often unready to embrace them, leaving behind an unfillable void that decades of media nostalgia can never truly fill. Which icon's journey left you the most haunted, or inspired you to walk with a higher sense of pride? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, share this story to shatter the silence, and subscribe to the channel as we continue to unearth the unfiltered truths of the legends who dared to shine.